I hope you enjoyed the little silkworm's greeting. My name is Paola Antonelli. I am a senior curator of architecture and design here at the Museum of Modern Art. As you can tell, I'm not at the museum and neither are you. I am broadcasting from my home in downtown Manhattan. And I'm very, very happy to be joined online by Neri Oxman, a great architect, a great designer, a great professor, and also a great, great, great friend. Ciao, Neri.
Ciao, Paola.
It's good to see you. Is everything going well?
Everything is good now that you're here.
We're always with each other, no matter where. Right? But I have to say, we are both very, very sorry that we can't welcome you to the galleries at this time. You know why. You know, we're delighted to have this opportunity to bring the museum to you, however, and all the art that we care about, we're bringing to you in these difficult weeks through our virtual views live Q&A. This is number 6. There's been some great ones and there will be many more that will come. And the focus this week is on an exhibition that we opened just a few weeks before we closed precipitously because of the COVID-19 crisis. It's an exhibition called Neri Oxman, Material Ecology. And it's an exhibition that explores Neri Oxman's work, a career that is almost 20 years at this point, and a collaboration and a partnership that started at MoMA in 2008. And we'll be able to talk about it and also to get your questions. I want to offer a special welcome to our vibrant community of MoMA members and donors. And for those of you that are not members yet and want to be part of this vibrant community, please join at moma.org/join. Also, I would like to give a special thank and a heartfelt one to our partners for design and innovation, MoMA's partner for design and innovation, that's Allianz, who made this exhibition possible. Also, sincerely, we would like to thank the International Council of the Museum of Modern Art and the Modern Women's Fund for their generous support. So tonight we have received a lot of questions from you. I have, as usual, a lot of questions for Neri, and we are very good at having chats that never end. So we'll have to kind of pace ourselves. But we also encourage you to submit your questions to us live. You can do so by using the YouTube chat feature that is next to the video, either to the right or below the video, depending on your device. Or you can send the questions via email to membership@moma.org. And our producer will pass the questions along to me. We want to give our viewers a few minutes to get settled in and tune in. So Neri and I will begin with a short conversation and then we'll turn on the word to you and we can have some questions. So Neri, how long has it been? You've been working on this for a long time, huh?
Yeah, it's funny. I think it was maybe days, not months, between opening and closing the show.
I know. But you know, it's funny because it feels like it was very short, but in truth, we started working together such a long time ago, actually in 2008. We met in 2007, probably, but in 2008, that was the first time that we showed your work in Design and the Elastic Mind, right?
Yeah, and in a way, the same themes that we took on there continued throughout the exhibition and throughout Material Ecology. So it's a pleasure and an honor to have this opportunity to show such a wide range of works.
Yeah, and this is a scene from the Design and the Elastic Mind exhibition, which was an exhibition about design and science coming together. And actually, at that time, you were finishing your PhD, you were already really working on computational design, and you had already kind of formulated this idea of material ecology. So can you please explain to us what material ecology means and what your philosophy of making growing objects is?
Sure. So material ecology is a broad name for, I'd say, a research approach and a design philosophy. So maybe a set or a suite of principles and then an associated collection of tools and technologies and tools in the service of bringing the built environment closer to the natural environment and the biological environment. So today, more than ever, yeah, there's this separation between the built environment, the natural environment, and the biological environment, and also between the ways in which we devise our units to think of products, buildings, cities, there's currently a separation between atoms, between bits, and between genes, the units of matter, the units of the digital world, and the units of the biological world. And what material ecology attempts to do is bring all the world of material, the entire world of human-made designs, closer to natural ecology. So there will be an intimate connection. I'd say the Turing test of material ecology is that one will not be able to differentiate between what is made and what is grown.
And that's pretty great, because as technology advances, I mean, you started your career 20 years ago. Your ambition is to bring together computation, additive manufacturing. So for those of you who are listening that don't know, it's 3D printing, it's the new technologies for making, and biology, right? So these spheres. And when you started, like, a Design and the Elastic Mind, if we can bring back that ray counting moment, at that time, the technologies were still a little rigid, right? Yeah. So what you could do was to distill algorithms and mathematical behaviors from natural objects, while today you can really go the whole shebang and infuse materials with biological entities, right?
Exactly. In the beginning, it was more like the image that you're seeing now is a project very early on that you've acquired, and we were honored of this. This was called ray counting, and it was basically a computational code that counts rays of light, is what it does. And it generates the form or the shape of the object as a relationship between the material and the light. So in a way, the designer is hands off, and the computational code brings together matter, and then the intensity of the light, the directionality of the light. The curvature is a result of the algorithm, and so is the thickness of the shape. So this is entirely code-based. It's entirely additively manufactured. So shape generated by computer and printed by a computer.
Inspired and actually taken from nature. And
exactly.
Technologically, so 2007 and 2008, 2007 you make it, 2008 we show it. And then in 2010, you start the Mediated Matter group, which is
my familia.
Weapon, and not your not so secret weapon, your family of wonderful experts from many different fields. So you see them on the left of the screen. That's the Mediated Matter group under the Silk Pavilion 2 at MoMA. And on the right hand side, she always wants to be in the shadow, but that's Anna Burkhardt, who is the other half and the better half of the curatorial team. So the Mediated Matter group at MIT started in 2010 because you realized that you needed to have even more weaponry with you in order to really bring biology and computation together, correct?
Absolutely. I mean, these are different languages, right? I always say the vertical microscope is the best way to see the world. Material scientists are used to see the world in terms of physical properties, and biologists in terms of physical behavior. And we want to have all of these combined into a single group. And so we've created Mediated Matter as a kind of Noah's Ark of all disciplines, all scales, 2 of each usually.
That's right. And that's what people are going to be seeing in the exhibition right now when they come back and when we reopen. And already there's a little bit of an introduction that you might have seen, so we can take you along the galleries. But what is important to discuss about the exhibition is that it's made of gorgeous objects that are standing in for experiments with materials and processes. So materials and processes that you have designed with the Mediated Matter group also.
That's true, and I'll say here that Paola made this bold decision to take out all the objects that are designed as objects. All of our wearables and our chairs were not included in the exhibition. It's an exhibition of process as product. technique as the object of desire. And that's challenging. It was challenging for our team. It was obviously challenging also for the exhibition goer, because what you're seeing is less a final object and more of a technology or a process. In fact, I do not think that there's a single project that we have created or taken on that for which we did not create the technology.
Yeah, which is amazing. But actually, they're quite wonderful projects. I would like to bring up the Silk Pavilion too, please, because we're so proud of it. That's kind of the centerpiece of the exhibition, and it's a piece that that Neri and I have been dreaming of for yes, at least 7 years. So you can see it here. This is the gallery where the exhibition is installed, and this big tower in the middle, this wonderful piece, is the Silk Pavilion too. You can see also in the little slide while we were installing it at the Museum of Modern Art. So before we go to the questions, because I know you and I start talking and then we forget about others, and I have to be a good responsible curator here. But can you tell a little bit of the story of the Silk Pavilion 2 and how it all happened?
There are so many stories and so many warps and wefts into understanding this project. But basically, this is a project about that is focused on our relationship with other species, in this case, the silkworm, and the love of silk, and also an ability to kind of question the role of the designer and the architect as the form giver, and enable the designer or allow the designer to be more of a gardener. So here you're looking at silkworms that are not spinning a three-dimensional cocoon. And this was the moment that we've discovered that when the silkworm is devoid of a vertical axis, a tree branch, it will still go about spinning its cocoon, but the cocoon will be flat. It will not be a three-dimensional cocoon. And when we understood that, we realized that we can co-fabricate together with the silkworms and cohabitate together with the silkworms without boiling and killing the silkworms, which is what often happens in the silk industry around the world. And so really questioning an entire industry, an entire way of making, using here fibrous materials. Here you're looking at a jig. It was 10 by 5 meter structure that rotates. I think it was 90 degrees every 15 minutes. So about, 15,000 turns over 10 days. And this jig rotates continuously. It has an underlying soluble mesh. It rotates continuously over 10 days, and the silkworms go about spinning their flattened cocoons on top of the jig. And as they spin, they pupate, they mate, they lay eggs, and so the entire natural metamorphosis occurs on the structure. Again, cohabitation and co-fabrication combined. These are processes that we call templating, where we enable or control the movement of the silkworm by controlling conditions such as light, heat, humidity, to determine the density and the orientation of the silk thread over the underlying structure.
And I need to have my Beavis and Butthead moment. The most important thing is that the silkworms also pee and poo on the structure, and they create these holes because the structure is made of water-soluble mesh. And then they fill in the holes. So it's a wonderful situation whereby, once I asked Neri, what is your role in all of this? The silkworms are doing their thing. It's almost like being the conductor of an orchestra, right? You kind of learn what the silkworms can do, and then you let them do their thing after you have modeled what their behavior could be, until there's this coming together of your intention and their intention in an object.
My friend Carrie Jones said yesterday, it's capoeira. You act as composer, you transform into conductor. The silkworms become musicians, but then they become the composers. And this kind of continuous process, I mean, the excretion part, the pooping and the peeing over the pavilion, what's interesting about that is that the excretion actually dissolves the underlying structure. Thereby, it releases residual energy that is locked in the structure. And acts to support the structural engineering process, as it were, of the entire structure. So there is a kind of a dialogue between the metabolic resume of the silkworms over the period of 10 days and the structural optimization that is taken into account. So there's metabolism literally that is taking shape over the period of the production of the pavilion.
And there are so many cycles of life in one pavilion. It's quite amazing. So I'm gonna ask you the first question that comes from Prue Pfeiffer, our very own Prue Pfeiffer. And actually Mo Kelman, they also have, Mo Kelman is a member, it's been a member for only 3 months, welcome. And they have similar questions. So Prue, how do you begin to pinpoint or investigate the biological processes and animals that can teach us about architecture? Is there a certain amount of field work outside of the lab? And Mo asks if, as your work evolves, if your primary driving force is pure experimentation that leads to outcomes that may possibly at some point, who knows, fulfill a sought after design solution, or instead it's experimentation that is expressly focused on providing a distinct solution to a specific design problem. So are you working as an old school designer, solving a problem solving, or are you instead inspired and kind of drawn in many directions by nature itself?
Yeah, we often say that, thank you for the question. It's a great one and a big one, but I'll answer briefly. We often say we are not problem solvers. We are solution seekers for problems we don't yet know exist. And that requires a kind of an innocence and wonderment that a child has. And I think we treat, or we like to think of addressing the natural world as a world of wonderment and innocence and a kind of a childlike exploration. And with the silkworm, actually, this started, I had a silkworm cocoon when I was giving my job talk at MIT, and I said, look, this will be our first project. It combines the best of all worlds. I mean, you have an organism that is way more sophisticated than all additive manufacturing combined. You have a superior material. You have a computation that is associated with the physical properties of the material. So the selection of the organism is associated with careful thinking about how can we learn from that organism or that natural process and implement these learnings in the world of the built environment, or how can we collaborate with this organism to create a co-authored or a co-fabricated piece of work. Ultimately the vision, of course, is to grow a light source or grow an iPhone,
and then make sure that that light source is also kind of decays by itself. That's also the beauty of objects that also decay.
Yeah, decay over disposal, a world without waste. And of course, can a world like this exist?
Let's bring up Agua Hoja while we also talk, because Agua Hoja, you can see it in the background over there, which is a whole series of experiments made with biomaterials that are available in nature, and that, well, I should say disassociate, but that's the scientific term you taught me, but it's easier if we say dissolve in certain amounts of time. While people look at Agua Hoja, and maybe we can put on also the video if you don't mind, because it's so mesmerizing, so you can see also the materials as they're being formed. I have a question that connects to what you were just saying, to collaboration. It comes from Dermot McCormack. He's asking, how much does collaboration play a part in your work? And how does the collaboration impact your work? So I can say here it's humans and animals.
Yeah, I would say the collaboration is across humans, organisms, and robots. So really the collaboration is cross species and across species, across media, across scales. And here in this case, for example, you're looking at what we call parametric chemistry, where we're able to vary the properties of the material on the molecular scale using a robotic arm. And to generate processes such as this, where you're able to create a material that is at once soft and stiff and opaque and transparent, and varies its property in a gradual way, unlike any kind of a prefab component that we are aware of. You know, you need a chemist and a material scientist and a biologist and a synthetic biologist, especially if you are to combine photosynthesis to generate sugar, you know, by exposing those hojas to sunlight. And so the collaboration is key here. And in terms of the collaboration with robots, that's also an interesting point, because in the project, in the video you've just seen, the form is truly informed by the robot, because the nozzle, the pressure that is, the air pressure with which the nozzle extrudes the material defines the relative thickness of the structural components. And so again, the robotic device takes authority and authorship as designer over the process of shape giving and form giving.
As you're saying this, even though I'm sorry because people want to see your face, but it's so perfect to cue in right now glass.
Sure.
In a way, there is a similar controlled serendipity also in this other project, which is a project that involved creating the first ever glass 3D printer. And we can show it now with the video. So even in this case, the collaboration with the robot was very important, to the point that it led to a mistake that then informed completely what you wanted to do. So do you want to say something about glass, please?
Yeah, you're looking at the first, this was 2015, we created the our first version of the optically transparent glass printer. This is molten glass poured into our, again, first very drafty printer that's made of 2 chambers, a kiln cartridge, and an annealing chamber underneath. And you're looking now at one of the errors or mistakes or mutations that occurred while we were printing. This was 1900 Fahrenheit, about 1000 Celsius, where we increased the distance between the end effector, the tip of the nozzle, and the printer's bed. And by virtue of doing so, we got these patterns that you get when you pour honey on toast or toothpaste on a toothbrush. We call this autocoiling, and this is really the structural instability of glass portrayed in physical form. And why is that interesting? Because when you blow glass or form glass or stress glass, the glass is usually of a homogeneous properties. Here, you're looking at a process that harnesses instability and creates, over time, we gain more and more control of the process, but creates curvature, features of curvature on the outside of the form that are independent of the inside curvature of the form. So in effect, you're designing an optical lens. And by designing an optical lens, of course, a wide range of opportunities to harness solar energy opens up with regards to building facades and thinking about the future cities, and how to use all this facade space as solar harnessing and solar harvesting footprint when we think about the future urban environment that started from a technology for which we didn't have the science. And by the way, again, there are no theorems or scientific papers written about liquid glass that is autocoiled. This was science that was created through the creation of the technology. So the technology was created first and the science followed, which is not usually the process by which designers operate.
Not only that, but it's also interesting, these 2 different outputs. And afterwards, we're going to talk about your work in the real world, right? Not that the lab is not the real world, but there's been many questions about its applicability. I find really beautiful the fact that the experiment is born out of a collaboration, out of curiosity of the different members of the Mediated Matter group. And the output of the project is, on the one hand, a new technology that might become an application in reality by architects, designers, and artists. And on the other hand, you have the scientific paper. That's also what I find really fascinating, because there are more and more architects that are working in this hybrid world, but I don't think that very few like you. I mean, I can count them on half of my left hand, architects that are really also producing scientific papers. By the way, there was a live comment about Agua Hoja. I wanted to just bring it up because it's lovely, from Ariana Borsea. She was saying, this concept is what I did my senior project on. You are an inspiration. And
thank you.
Absolutely true. So I have a question for me now that's gonna enable us to talk about an important point that I know both you and I want to talk about. So the question is from David Klein. It's for me, and it says, as a curator, how do you articulate process in a museum context where things are typically beautiful finished artifacts, ? Was there concern that these material studies might be perceived as art objects? I like the fact that David talks about concern that that might be perceived as art projects, because I do have that concern. I really care about design and architecture being seen as design and architecture. Well, meta, what is meta? I mean, so many of us in the world at this point are used to unfinished conceptual processes. We do so, we're used to seeing them in video, we're used to seeing them in many different aspects. We're not used to seeing them that much in design. So it's something relatively new, but the artifacts in the exhibition are gorgeous. The only thing that they don't have is the final application or the flaunting of a function. So you're seeing here one of my favorite objects. I mean, they're all favorite objects, but on the left-hand side is Lazarus, which, right now I'm going to ask Neri to speak about, and then the series of Vespers on the right-hand side. These are objects. They might even have a function, and I'm going to let Neri talk about it, but it's a function that is there to really demonstrate how this idea of bringing together old and new, ancient and innovative, biological and additive and computational can come together in a highly symbolic and ritualistic object. Now that I've said my bit, Neri, why don't you explain to our visitors, to our guests, what we're looking at, please?
Yeah, so we're looking at the left is Lazarus. It is a mask that was designed to contain a single breath. It is the last breath of the dying. That is our most luscious, lush, and I think 500 milliliters of air. It's the first breath that we take and the last breath that we give. That is our richest. And here we wanted to be able to contain that breath as a kind of an urn memento, as a death mask that is not about keeping the legacy or of the features of the face of the dying, but enabling us to contain a part of their body, as it were, to maybe nourish new life. And so this series that started as a series of death masks in 3 collections, or I should say a collection of death masks in 3 series, 1, 2, and 3, the natural materials, the digital materials, and the biological materials, was really the basis for a question that started this research, which is, how do we design living objects? How can we start thinking about the design of objects and buildings and products that are alive, that are adapting, that are responding to the environment and the human body? How can we incorporate biological materials, etc.? And so in this series called Vespers, we've experimented with combining photopolymers with actually with chemical signals that are incorporated into the printed matter. And by virtue of incorporating these chemical signals into our printable resins, these chemical signals then communicate with cells, in this case E. coli, to express specific genetic pathways in order to express, in this case, pigments. So in this case, you're looking at the Aztec Blue pigment that we are controlling. We're controlling its expression over space and also over time. Now, in the context of the death mask, this is an Aztec Blue that comes to life in a death mask. But in the context of COVID-19, this could be an antiviral mask, or this could be not an Aztec Blue pigment, but antibiotics. And this series that started really as a very abstract exploration of the limits of life and death ended up with a new class of materials and a bunch of scientific papers that we call hybrid living materials, HLMs. And those are a class of materials that combine artificial and biological matter with a prescribed functionality and all the processes and technologies associated with the creation of these materials.
What you're going to encounter in the exhibition when you come is all these different components, so of course we're going to have the artifacts, those beautiful objects that embody all this thinking and all this experimentation. Then we also will show you tables that look as if they have been stolen from the lab, that show all the different samples, all the different prototypes and models that led to the final product, final step along the way. And also we have videos that show the process itself. So what is important is that, as we mentioned at the beginning, we're showing artifacts and beautiful objects that are demos of new materials and processes that embody this new philosophy of material ecology. So the exhibition really means to also show that. And now I have two live questions that I can actually aptly combine because they move in the same direction. One is from Alice Tish. She says, Neri, you mentioned the process as very important and that you are problem solvers for problems not yet existent. So do you define the questions through imagination or are they undefined? And I'm going to tie to this Marsden Kelly, who says, I admire so much how future-oriented your focus is, Neri. But how did you start creating space and finding support to explore concepts that most people hadn't even started thinking about yet? So it's almost like the horror vacui, right? This starting from the blank page. So how do you begin? And how do you...
Deep breath. Imaginary Beings started with Borges, an Encyclopedia of Fantastic Zoology, I fell in love with the book and thought, wow, design is exactly about that. Design is about fantastic zoology. Design is about augmenting the power of, the power of myth, bringing to life the power of myth. And in Imaginary Beings, we started creating these collections of corsets and helmets that were designed to accommodate multiple functions, protection, comfort, etc., and augmented the human body, made it better. And through this process, we created a new technology. In this case, this was bitmap printing. So these were printed at 16 micron, 700 dpi. So for that time, it was very, very much a sophisticated process of printing, and we worked with Stratasys on this. I think that different inspirations bring us to these explorations. With Totems, we started with Moby Dick. We were fascinated by the albino whale. We were fascinated by, the definition of other, or whiteness, or the lack of melanin that creates the other. And then we started exploring this process that we started with a death mask and ended up with a proposal for the Nelson Mandela Centennial Memorial, which you're looking at here.
Yes, the rendering on the bottom left, that's for it.
Yeah, so this has a bit of Imaginary Beings and a little bit of Vespers. By the way, this I would say Imaginary Beings and Wonders and Vespers all were projects that were collections, that were almost like a library of experiments that unite a kind of a curiosity and a very rigorous process that focuses on the fusing of material, the material and the biological. And with Totems, we sort of took HLMs to the next level, and we said, okay, what we did for pigments in the death mask, can we do with melanin, with one of the most important biological elements to not only the human species, but all species on Earth. And can we template its behavior so that we can generate a first of its kind, truly biological architecture? What you're looking at now is different ways that we've invented to synthesize melanin in the lab, computationally grow these vessels and modulate their properties in order to ultimately arrive and an ability to control these enzymatic processes inside a building skin or as part of a spatial volume. Melanin is incredible because, yeah, as you know, it exists in our skins. It protects us from UV radiation. It will protect our species from radiation when we go to our outer space, but it is also a biomarker of evolution. It is 160 million years old. And it is without it, we will have no biodiversity on the planet. And so it is an extremely important chemical element. And we are still, we're fascinated by melanin, and we're still in the process of finding ways to incorporate it into the built environment.
So I have, I would like to give you a break and take a question, but it's flowing so well. Are you okay?
Yeah, I'm great.
No, I know you don't, you have
7 more hours, Bucky Fuller style.
So I have a few questions that I can group together because they're all about the practical implications of what you do. And that's a question that I got a lot also from the press, because, you know, people are wondering, you know, they're completely mesmerized by the works, but then they ask, what's going to happen then?
What's it good for? Are they crazy? What are they doing? Where are they going?
So with totems, I always say, oh, you can have a facade of a building with melanin inside. It's going to be sensitive and it's going to save energy. But let me ask you the questions. They come from Claire Corey, from David Reisman, from Georgina Bernasconi, and from David Klein, you know, and I'm sure many more will have. So Claire asks if you think that the organic materials that you're creating will become substitutes for plastic. David Reisman asks, how your own interests and concerns will become commercial and practical applications. So do you think it will happen, or you don't really care? Georgina Bernasconi is asking, she says, it's wonderful how you're thinking about the future, but what about the present, the applications in material science and construction? Can you mention any examples where your work has already had some practical application? And finally, David Klein is asking, when are your technology and materials going to be applied? So they're all about the leap from prototype, which is already reality. I mean, these are already proven, to then dissemination and scalable.
Yeah. Yeah. So as my husband likes to say, everything and now. Everything and now. So look, the way we think about our work is a kind of a pragmatist philosophy or a philosophical pragmatism. And depending on how you sort of bend your intellectual demeanor, you get sort of a kind of a short-term solutions for existing problems, and also longer-term projection to problems you don't yet know exist. So a good example is a gohocha. Of course, you know, this is a 7-meter pavilion that we've created. We've actually created 2 already. The second one communicates with natural organisms in the environment. And, you know, can we talk about products as replacements for plastics today, tomorrow? Absolutely, yes. Can we talk about entire cities that dissociate and biodegrade, you know, in contrast to the notion of monumentality, the Roman notion of monumentality, buildings that survive forever? This will obviously take hundreds of years. So I think for each of the projects, for HLMs, for the death masks, there is a process that we're working now that we believe will help with the COVID-19 pandemics, or antiviral surfaces and antibacterial surfaces that we're developing with our materials. And then there are the longer term projections of what does the built environment actually look like? How do we engage in a space that is made out of these materials? How can a building survey the immune system of its inhabitants and respond to it? Is that even possible? And so I think for us, it is incredibly important to do both, to commit to shorter term solutions. And for this, we published the scientific papers, and I think the Krebs cycle here is relevant. and longer term projections for the vision.
Let's talk about the prep cycle for a moment. But also I wanted to just to remind people, when we say HLM, we mean hybrid living materials, which is a whole category of biomaterials that are infused with live components. But it's a big deal, but I just wanted to say that's what HLM is. But before we go to the other questions, it's important that we talk about this vision that Neri has for the way we will create in the future. And so, do you want to talk about this? This is very important.
Sure. So in this cycle, rather than separating between art, science, and engineering and design as 4 separate rubrics, here we're drawing a circle around these 4 domains or ways of being in the world.
I have a way of explaining that, and then I'll pass it on to you. So because it's about thinking really and visualizing. In the past, you used to always see these Venn diagrams, right? So you used to see a circle with art, a circle with science, circle with design, circle with engineering, and sometimes they would overlap as if it were almost like happenstance, and then they would just go back to their own corners, right? So sorry, this is
and you sort of you had to have a passport and a citizenship for each of those domains, and you couldn't be a citizen of the world as you can here. And here really this is a citizen of the world across across disciplines, across scales, across media, where what we're doing is we're sort of reimagining these 4 domains as a continuous cycle, where the input from one domain becomes the output for another. So I'll give an example, and a good analogy is transaction, actually thinking of currency. And if, where, for every continent, for every country, you have a different currency. The currency, of course, enables you a way of existing, a way of being in the world. So here we go. So the currency for science is scientific papers, knowledge, the creation of theorems. The role of science is to question, explain, and predict the natural environment. And it converts the currency of information to currency of knowledge. These theorems create knowledge. Engineering converts knowledge, the currency of knowledge, into the currency of utility. Design converts the currency of utility into a currency of change in behavior, change in social behaviors, if we do it right. And artists then look at these changes in behavior at a cultural context and re-question these existing ways of being through perception. And question the information that is created, and then can then feed back into science. And I believe I always say the Cinderella moment is 12 o'clock, midnight, the midnight moment when the artist informs this, when the art informs the science. Culture on the west side, nature on the east side, perception on the north, production on the south, head in the clouds, art and science, feet on the ground, design and engineering. And the cycle really brings together, almost like a compass, all of these domains. And every team member in our group is challenged with they're either great at this one thing, they are either great scientists or great builders, but they also have to embody the entirety of the cycle. And I always tell the team, if you want to be on the team, you got to produce work that will end up at the Museum of Modern Art, but also work that will end up at the cover of Nature or Science magazine. And the creation of knowledge, the creation of new insight about the physical environment is just as important as the embodiment and the deployment of these projects in the real world, outside of the lab, outside of the museum, which is where we're going next.
Yeah, I agree. And what I've always loved about the model is this interdependency and this generosity. I mean, it's the flow that really is part of how we should move into the world, and the curiosity also. I have now 2 questions that are about the catalog, and I'm super happy. So one is from Dermot McCormack, and he's asking, will there be an accompanying catalog for this wonderful looking exhibition? Hell yeah, there is already. And actually, there's a question from Irma Chen that asks, I understand you worked with Irma Boom on the catalog. How did it go? What was her concept? So yeah, there's a fabulous catalog. Irma Boom, for those of you who don't know her, is probably the best book designer in the world. Yeah, so she's quite wonderful. She's Dutch. She already worked on the catalog of Design and the Elastic Mind amongst hundreds of other books. But so we already had this rapport. And when you work with her, you just have to be hands off. You tell her your concept, and then she tells you her concept. And that's the best of all worlds, because the concept that she came back to us with when we told her what Neri does and the way she thinks, she said, okay, this is like the whole Earth catalog. It's about tools for the future, right? It's about how we will build, how we will grow, how we will live, and how we will coexist with nature. And so you see here the cover and some of the pages. So the cover is an homage to the whole Earth catalog, as are the pages. You see that crowdedness. And I have to say, it's not only Anna Burkhardt, but also all the team that works with Neri. Those pages are thick and dense with serious scientific information. And also our editorial team did a fantastic job because it was serious editing. Is there anything what did you think when you got this concept?
I mean, when you get Irma, you get the Pope. You don't like, you don't question. So I think this is one of my favorite, collaborations, because you have a designer with such a strong vision that in a way, working with her to edit her taste and thinking would compromise the quality of the work. And so when I knew Irma was summoned, I let go, and in that respect, it was wonderful to sort of see your own work, your team's work, being packaged in a way that's not native to you. I mean, we all love minimalism and sans serif, and all of a sudden we got we got the opposite, and we loved it, and so it was a wonderful process.
It's been altogether an amazing process. And, when we have conversations like this, it's impossible to mention everyone. But when you'll go to the galleries, dear guests, you will see that there's a whole post on one wall that tells you everybody that worked on the exhibition, from the painters to the carpenter to our wonderful Paulette, who is Giguère, who's the person that does all the silk screening for MoMA, who created a special ink for the title wall that's made of turmeric and beetroot, and therefore will change during, thank you so much. You see, it will change during the exhibition.
It probably has changed.
It probably has changed already, yes. So there are live questions, a live question from Miley Huang, and it's a question, there are so many questions that are pouring in, but I'm trying to pick some that express your generosity. She's asking, Miley Huang, can you give any suggestion to art students that don't have a scientific background on what we can do to protect the environment?
You don't need scientific background to protect the environment. All you need is a question, and you have it already. I think it's not science that will save us. It is humanity. It is kindness. It is curiosity. It is innocence. It is questioning the status quo, and that's why I think art and science are so intertwined. I mean, when you think about the great moments of scientific revolutions, 1902, you have Einstein and Picasso, right? A scientist and an artist working on the same theme, right? They were both interested in the space-time continuum. One creates the general theory of relativity, the other creates cubism. But both are interested, both have a kind of a sensitivity towards the questions of the time. And I think just connecting with that spirit can channel a great path. And of course, as always, collaboration. I mean, I have been trained as a medical doctor, but I did not have a PhD in biology, and I learned so much from Sunanda and Rachel on my team. from, about biology, synthetic biology. I mean, we've created a wet lab, a first of its kind wet lab for architects and designers at the lab, with the help of my students who know about the world of biology so much more than I do. And Joao with robotics, and Christoph with computer science, and Nick with biomaterials, and the list just goes on and on. Yeah, and Mike with a glass printer, and Daniel, and I mean, it just it's endless. So
yeah.
Yes, I mean, this is a research family, and all it takes is a great pasta and a great question, and humility.
So we have a great question from our beloved Howard Gardner. You and your team clearly have a lot of ideas and questions. Can you say a bit about which ideas don't work at first? And are you more likely to drop them, reformulate them, or put them on the back burner?
I am such a student of yours, Howard, and it's such an honor to know that you're here and that you're listening. So thank you for your question. I don't know that we that we operate with ideas. I think we move about the world through a kind of a sensitivity or a taste in thinking, as Susan Sontag often said about intelligence as a suitcase word. We are not interested in, again, in the context of the group, we've never been interested with short-term solutions to problems we knew that there are already existing solutions for. So ideas that don't work or projects that don't work are often mundane, are often ones for which there exists a technology, for which there exists a process. We know that we are in interesting territory and in mediated matter relevant territory when there is not yet a technology or a process to create that thing. And then we go in, and so we're driven by a process first kind of approach to ideas, and ideas again is a suitcase word, and the Turing test is really, oh, how did they make it? I don't know how they made it. How was it produced? I don't know how it was produced. Then we go in. When we can author the process, we know we can control the narrative. Great. And how the story ends, right?
I have another good question from Kevin Ballon about a topic that is crucial and complicated. So Kevin asks, the objects and materials in material ecology are stunningly beautiful, from the Vespers to the totems and so on and so forth. So how do you think about beauty? What role does it play in your work and in the presentation of your work?
So I love the Bucky Fuller quote about beauty. When I'm working on a problem, I never think about beauty. But when I have finished, and if the solution is not beautiful, I know that it is wrong. So beauty is like God. It's always there and never there, right? It is sort of a kind of a way of being, or again, to bring back Susan Sontag, she said of beauty that it is a gladness of the senses, which I love. I love this expression. The gladness of the senses. You know that something is right when there is a kind of an order that can be addressed by the senses, and whether it's the visual senses or the intellectual senses, right? You can say that that democracy is beautiful because it has this order that relates to social equality in this and that way. So it does not need to be a physical beauty. It can be a beauty that is associated with a mentality and an intellectual beauty and intellectual order. And that's definitely something that has guided our work for sure, our processes and I always say we care about font size and type as much as we care about the types of bacteria that we host in our work.
I can attest to that. Oh my God. Well, we like that. We're also quite perfectionists here. So we're almost at the end of our time. So I'm going to take this one final question. And for this final question, I would like to call out the slide from 53rd Street, please. And the final question is, many of you have asked whether or not they will be able to see the exhibition when we reopen. You know what? Yes. You will be able to see it. We don't know yet when we'll reopen. As you know very well, it's not in our control only. We're also waiting for the governor to tell us, but the exhibition is there and is waiting for you all and is waiting for us too. I mean, I can tell you that Neri and I miss it tremendously, and Anna and I miss it tremendously. This is a view from 53rd Street of a lady looking at the video. We have this gigantic video screen on 53rd Street that broadcasts this gorgeous, gigantic silkworms. And if you've never played with a silkworm, you have to do it because it's a memorable experience. They are wonderful. So do you have anything you want to tell our audiences, Neri, as you say goodbye?
I mean, I want to thank you, Paola, for you know, often when I look at the task force on TV, I wonder, why is there no designer or architect on the COVID-19 task force? Yeah. You know, why is there no architect designer in, you know, in the political agenda defining policy? I mean, where often designers and architects are relegated to a place where, you know, where
embellishment,
apply to competitions or have commissions from clients to collaborate with, and a question that I'm asking, and many of you say you're too young or innocent or too old to be that innocent, is can we create practices where nature is the only client? Can design and architectural construction challenge the industry, challenge manufacturing processes, challenge policy, inform the way we think about, you know, the United Nations sustainability goals, and how do practices like this bring about change in the world in an incredibly meaningful way? And, you know, what is that next internet look like in the built environment, and how is that new movement going to help us survive on the planet and beyond? Because time is short and the sixth extinction is on its way.
Oh, yeah.
There's a lot of work ahead, and I'm super honored that you gave us this space, literally and intellectually, to bring about a message that is, that is sensitive but incredibly.
Well, your message is our message. We believe in it. So thank you.
And thank you to the MoMA team for all their hard work.
I know. I love
working together.
My MoMA team. So thank you. And thank you so much, you all, for joining us this evening. So I see that we've had viewers tune in from Colombia, Brazil, Argentina, New York, North Carolina, Connecticut, New Jersey. Yay, Jersey's in the house. Rhode Island, Thailand, Mexico, Turkey, Massachusetts, California, Virginia, Maine, Australia, China, Peru, Portugal, Pennsylvania, and I'm sure I'm missing some here. But remember, you can stay up to date with everything that's happening at the Museum of Modern Art on magazine and on moma.org, where you will find much more information about Neri and material ecology. There's a beautiful interview with the BBC. There's a little tour of the exhibition, the audio guide to the show. So please tune in, the catalog we told you about. But I want to say that I really, really appreciate all the help from my colleagues across the museum who have made all this possible, physical and digital reality. And I thank everyone again for tuning in. So next week, there's going to be a live Q&A with Amy Silman, the wonderful artist that is responsible for the Artist Choice installation that is now at the 5th floor, I think it is, of the museum. I can't remember any numbers anymore. And it's going to be with Michelle Kuo, my beloved colleague. And I really want to thank the Museum of Modern Art for giving me the opportunity to work with Neri and to show you all the wonderment of her work. We'll see you soon at the reopening of the Museum of Modern Art. My friend Neri, thank you so much. And good night, everyone. Ciao.
Ciao.